welcome to another episode of Whoscussion. A little bit more on time than last week was. And we have again with us the wonderful, the illustrious Harry Kelly.
Right on.
Yes, awesome. Alrighty, so today we are going over the first half of Season 2. So that's Planet of the Giants Part 1 all the way through to The Rescue Part 2.
Aye.
So, am I allowed to go first? Is that okay? Would that be like a little bit over the top for me, or
No,
no? Okay. Well,
you never go first.
Yeah, I know, right? I was just thinking about that this week, and I was just like, "Hang on, I've never gone first." Season 2 starts off with a bit of a weird episode or story. Sorry, Planet of Giants. It was from a little bit of research I did on it. Apparently, it was meant to be the original pilot. I'm very happy it wasn't. I'm not at all making fun of David Whittaker's work at all. I thought he was a great writer for Who, but I'm glad they went with Anthony Coburn for the beginning. Just because I think opening it up with Planet of the Giants would have been even weirder than opening it up with cavemen.
Yes.
What I liked about it is being green and stuff wasn't really a thing in the 60s. I don't think at all, really. Except for like later in the 60s with like the flower power movement and all that. So like early 60s, I don't think there really was anything about green. And what I liked about this is it was a green story that wasn't forcing, being green down your throat. And it's because it was accidentally a green story. So it was interesting that the pure concept behind it is there was a pesticide that was so powerful it killed everything except for plants, which obviously the businessman end was just like, obviously didn't understand how plants work. They actually need other animals to exist. They need the insect kingdom to be around. And I liked that it was played really straight-faced. Like, you had the little people, like the borrowers, which was the TARDIS crew. I like that they talk about the TARDIS having smaller dimensions, and I really like that. To be honest, I don't... when I was watching that episode, again, going over Planet of the Giants for this episode of Whoscussion, I thought it was weird because it was smaller... The TARDIS was smaller than the cube from that episode Flatland. Flatline, sorry, from Peter Capaldi's first season. And I was just like, if that's the case, why didn't it turn into that cube that's in that episode? It's obviously accidental retconning. But I thought that was very strange. That in Flatland it turned into that cube thing when it didn't back at 50 years ago.
Yeah, when it was like
in Planet of the
Giants.
Yeah. I love the practical effects; they were really good. That fly was real cool. I liked the ant. It was a huge, large scale ant. I loved that. It didn't look like they were surrounded by props. It actually looked like these people had been shrunk. I thought that was very effective. I don't know how they would have done it, especially since Doctor Who didn't have the greatest of budgets. So that must have been a very, very difficult thing for them to do. Though, in saying that, by 1964, where this season kicks off, it would have been an established thing by then. The first Doctor Who annual comes out in 64. So Planet of the Giants I thought was an interesting choice for the beginning of the season, though it could have been a budget thing. But if it was a budget thing, there's a lot of expensive practical effects in this episode, so was it a budget thing? But I liked that the TARDIS crew aren't really that effectual in the episode. They're sort of experiencing a crime, and they do something about it, and they're actually responsible for the bad guys getting arrested. Simply because they got a phone off the hook. I thought that was quite interesting. The Doctor gets somebody arrested by taking a phone off the hook. And it was something that sort of minuscule that I thought was really interesting, because it kind of reminded me of when David Tennant's Doctor overthrew Harriet Jones's government with a couple of words.
Yes. Yeah.
Something really small had a big impact.
Yeah, don't you think she looks ill?
Yeah. I would love for Big Finish to pick up that pesticide thing. It'd be cool to see if somebody might have weaponized it. I'd really like that arc to be picked up. But yeah, that's my take on Planet of the Giants. So what are your thoughts coming away from Planet of the Giants, the opener of season 2?
Well, it is definitely an interesting story. Very Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Um, that's always a good one. I mean, honestly, when it comes down to it, the sort of the small people sort of trope, I guess, hasn't been played out that much in sci-fi. Honestly, like I only can name like two other things that have had this sort of stuff happen, well, except for like cartoons anyway.
Wow, that's a good point.
Actually,
I
no,
can't think of
sorry,
very many sci-fi things that have done this, except for was it Journey into the something? Can't remember now. Journey of the something.
you're journeying into some like into a person. Like there was
Yeah.
that one. So actually, so make that three. So there's the Borrowers, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and Journey into Jim Morgan. I think it might be something like that. Um, yeah, those are like the only three like proper movie budget, like big deal things that I can imagine that this has been a part of. Like I can think of like a couple of like random sort of things, like cartoons that have had just randomly just somebody small for a bit, like just stuff like that. Like Rick and Morty, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's normally them playing on somebody else's on those other three movies. So you know. Um, but I mean, when it comes to the way that it is, it as you were saying before, it is looks fantastic, even though generally Doctor Who doesn't have like you don't imagine them having that big of a budget. But I mean, this is sort of really how Doctor Who was back then, is that they did so much with how little a budget they had.
Yeah.
That they sort of set the standard on doing great things with small budgets. Like that's just how they were. Like those massive paintings they did for the backdrops for the Aztecs, that sort of stuff. So they did what they needed to do with what they had, and it turns out great, as we can tell. Of course, then there's the fact that that it is a great episode. I don't know. I don't imagine that it was. Well, of course, I'm pretty sure that it was accidentally an environmentalist one. But I mean, it's really
very environmentalist friendly. Yeah, that episode.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, I don't think it's what's the word? I don't think it was I don't think it was an accident by any means, but I don't think it was like truly that was the intention. That the intention, I don't think really the intention was to say, be green, but the intention was definitely to point a finger at some corporations and their practices with pesticides.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
It is a pretty big deal, even now, that there are companies that use pesticides that they really shouldn't do on plants and crops that they really shouldn't.
Yeah, it reminds me of back in the 90s, they said you had to wash all your fruit and veg before you ate it.
Yeah.
Back in the 90s? That's crazy, man.
It's like, why do we use this sort of stuff? But yeah, even obviously it was still a big big deal back then, and it's still a big deal now.
Yeah.
So we should probably have a revisit of this sort of storyline in the new Doctor Who. That would be pretty interesting, actually.
Yeah, that's what I was saying before. I'd really like this thread to be picked up, especially that particular product from that scientist.
Yeah, that would be pretty interesting, actually. Although knowing the new series of Doctor Who, it'll probably end up being like weaponized against like a bug alien race.
Oh my goodness.
But hey, let's not talk about that.
Actually, you've just in saying that, you've raised something I've never even thought of before.
Yeah.
It's not a pure historical, and there's no aliens.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my god! I hadn't even thought of that before until you just pointed it out. There is no aliens, and it's not a historical. It's not a period piece at all. It happens on contemporary Earth, and there's no alien.
It has been the same around the same time that they left. The first time they'd come back since they left, basically, and it's absolutely no aliens. Just corporations trying to get the best out of people.
Wow,
which is
impressive. I wonder if it holds like a record in Who history. I can't think of another story that's done this. No alien. It's not a historical.
No, I'm pretty sure that the Third Doctor has something like that. Surely, where there was just like a guy.
Green Death, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure there was something like that.
I think Green
Uh,
Death. Yeah, I think you're right. Ah, blast.
I know that. I know that a lot of the time, even though it was a human element and a human evil, there was always like the master playing a part whenever it came to that.
The
But
master.
you know, that master, that tricksy beast. Um, um, yeah, it's definitely an interesting one, especially leading into the next episode or next story, where Susan just goes and leaves. Like,
Yeah,
like they obviously they must have known that that was happening when they started this one, and they went with it. Like this a lot of things happen in this. Well, I say there's a lot of interaction between the Doctor and Susan in Planet of the Giants. Like there is a lot more. At least the way that I felt it is that there was a lot more interaction going on between Susan and William Hartnell compared to the other
definitely.
stories,
Definitely, because
where
apparently
it seems.
Hartnell was real sad that Caroline Ford had resigned from Doctor Who.
Yeah. I mean, it's not even that. It's like I think they may have written that in there that like that we were finally seeing the way that they were. That we're finally seeing the relationship in a good light,
Mm.
and then they go next episode. They go ahead and just tear that away. Like that it's like, hey, you guys know about this about this band-aid that you've got on your leg. Well, next episode we're gonna rip it off. And it's like, yeah, ooh.
Dalek Invasion of Earth is interesting because it completely sort of contrasts against the backdrop of Planet of the Giants. So Planet of the Giants was, again, no alien menace. It was set in contemporary Earth, and it's about this green issue. And then we come to the Daleks and Dalek Invasion of Earth. It's in the far-flung future, and we lost a war against the Daleks.
Well, we're in the process of losing.
Yes, we're in the process of losing a war against the Daleks. And we're first ever introduced to the Daleks Robo Men, who would later on become the replicants that
Yep.
are in New Who. I thought that was really cool with New Who, actually, is that they actually went back and they like touched on Robo Men. The special effects for the Robo Men could have been a little bit better.
I thought they were hilarious.
Yeah, the neck brace though.
It's good.
Though in the same time, I mean, that was very of the time for 60s science fiction. You know,
Yeah.
if somebody's going to be mind controlled, they're going to have a huge device on their head. And
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, like, if you think now, like, just imagine how terrifying the Dalek, the replicants that we have now. Just imagine how terrifying that would be to 1960s England.
yeah,
Like,
no way.
that would have blown their minds just to think, what if my neighbor is a Dalek? No!
Oh.
It's like sort of like American communist sort of deal, you know?
Yeah, oh, definitely. Because the thing is that the Daleks were introduced as sort of like a pseudo-Nazi.
Exactly. So
And the Robo-Men, I could definitely see them as being an analogy for communism because, you know, they're controlled. They all work towards one goal, you know, and they all turn on their own people.
yeah.
which was definitely the ideals of communism at the time.
Yeah.
But what I love about this episode, and this is one of the episodes that got turned into a feature-length film, actually, for was it Doctor Who and the Invasion of the Daleks 2058 or something random, and this story, we have Ian being the Superman again,
That Ian. Oh.
which wasn't present in the Planet of the Giants. I quite like that.
Well, he was a small man at that point.
One of the things I love the most in this is Susan puts that sexist guy in his place. That guy goes, you know, this woman here can cook. What can you do? And Susan's like, I eat. It's just so good. Like Susan just puts that sexist guy right in his place. It's so amazing. And definitely quite empowering, especially since Susan was definitely the screaming Susan. Not a particularly strong character, but she goes out in a blaze of glory there. She does something that I don't think you would have seen on 60s television. Is she's a teen making out with a dude. Because she on screen makes out with this guy. I was just like, whoa, could you guys do that back then? And
Well, they needed a really good reason for her to not stick around.
yeah,
So
well, what I liked is they went about it as teens do. Like they made out and then they stopped making out as soon as the adult appeared, when the Doctor
yeah,
appears. And I'm like, come on, do you guys actually think the Doctor didn't see that? Like, who are you trying to fool here, guys? Holy crap! Um, and what I really loved is that the Doctor's picking up on this, and he let Susan go in a realistic way. It wasn't like it is now, how it's over the top. There's like a season long arc about you're gonna cry when the companion leaves this episode. It
yeah,
just sort of came out of nowhere. I don't think it was ever spoiled by a news outlet like it is today as well. I think it was all in house, so no one knew that Susan was going to be going,
yeah,
apart from obviously the script writers and the actors, and
yeah,
obviously the woman who takes over from Susan's place later on.
yeah,
But what I love is the Daleks want to mechanize Earth
hmm
and completely like decimate it and turn it into like something for the engines, which is interesting because um, the 10th Doctor actually touches on that in what episode is it? The Stolen Earth. He says somebody wanted to move that, but that was a long time ago, and it couldn't be them. And then it was them. It was the
yeah.
Daleks,
It was straight up them.
which is so cool. But this is like the first companion leaving story arc. They set it up very nicely. I like David because he's competent. I like that Susan has a heck of a backbone in this story. Which is quite good. You can see that she's becoming independent, so she actually doesn't need her grandfather anymore. And the Doctor sees that traveling with him is dangerous.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so this leads into, as I said in another Whoscussion, my favourite episode of scene of all time in all of Who, which is the first goodbye. When he says
Yeah.
goodbye to her. And I love it because it feels natural. It's not like some sort of prophecy that Susan was going to leave, like it is in New Who. She was leaving because she needed to grow up, and she was growing up, and she was independent. And I was just like, this is perfect. It's like that's why I like how Martha leaves. She leaves naturally. She's just like, oh, hey, look, it was fun, but I'm out of here. Which is again leads into why I love when Tegan leaves, is because it's natural. And I'm just like, this is how companions should leave the show, naturally. And it's great because you can see in Hartnell's performance that he actually gave so much. Like, he cared so much about Carol Ann Ford, the actress. So he wasn't just an actor portraying the First Doctor giving up his granddaughter. He was saying goodbye to one of his best mates. And I was just like, this is superb. And the good thing about the Dalek story is, like, Susan and David kick ass, man.
Yeah,
They kick ass left, right, and center. And David's just, like, going around gunning people up, and he's just like, bro, when this fight's over, I want to go make a farm. And Susan's like, I'm on board for that.
I want to tap that.
But in the 8th Doctor audios, we're never going to mention the fact that you had a farm.
Yes.
But yeah, so Susan, I love that it's natural. I love that the Daleks are threatening in this as well, because they are legit going to destroy everything. And then the First Doctor, he uses that like magnet to get out of the because they get out of that thing.
Yeah,
and he's just like chink chink, and I thought that was so cool that like that the Daleks are defeated, because that's something that I really like about the First and Second Doctor era, is the Daleks are defeated without Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah.
And the First and Second Doctor eras are the only time that happens, because every time afterwards, the Daleks are defeated by Deus Ex Machina.
Really, yeah.
And I like this. There's a lot of setup. There's a lot of good acting. What I find interesting, though, is there is I don't know if it's a continuity fluff, and correct me if I'm wrong on thinking this, but the bomb they use on the Daleks is called the Dalekanium bomb.
Yeah.
Later on in the Whoniverse, the stuff the Daleks are made out of, their tank shell, is called Dalekanium. So I'm confused.
I'm pretty sure that the baubles on the side of them is what's Dalekanium. As Dalekanium is like I think it's more of like a radioactive isotope. Like it's a metal that can be used in a sort of in a reaction that can power things, as well as heavily devastative. Sort of like the like Naquita, which is from Stargate. where all the stargates are made out of naquadah, but naquadah can also be used to to fuel a fission bomb, which is like hundreds of times more powerful. So,
Right.
yeah.
How very fearful. I see. Okay, so that makes a heck of a lot of sense. See, this is why I love Whoscussion. You know,
Yeah.
I like to think of myself as like a great Doctor Who aficionado, but I'm not afraid to know that I need to learn some things, and I like that about our little discussions here. Well, our
Yeah.
Whoscussions.
We have some. We get some learning going on.
Yeah, definitely. Right. So, what's really cool is there is a character who is in a wheelchair, and they don't have him as being like in the road. And he's a really effective member of this rebellion against the Daleks, and is actually the one who invents the Dalekanian bomb, and he uses it, and he goes out like a champion.
Yeah.
I love that. He's just like for Sparta, and then he ends up sacrificing himself for the betterment of mankind. What's interesting though is like how England is the one that overthrows the Daleks.
No, of course it is. I mean, come on.
It's so like extremely patriotic. If the Earth was attacked by Daleks, the British will defeat them.
It's just like in Independence Day. It was the Americans that defeat the
Yeah,
aliens.
exactly. Yeah, it's the disaster that affects the whole world, and it's that one country that rises up against them. It's so good.
I mean, come on. If we here in New Zealand wrote a fantastic alien story, and it was in fact us who defeated the aliens, no one would bat an eyelid. I mean, I think people would actually be pretty weirded out if we like did a whole story on aliens attacking New Zealand and then the Japanese fight them off. Like, people just like
they come over with Jaegers, eh?
Yeah. People would be like, now that's Deus Ex Machina. So yeah, I mean, I love this episode. Honestly, this is definitely one of the best from just the whole of William Hartnell's era. I mean,
was
it's
this a
definitely
Nation script?
Sorry?
Was this a Nation script, Terry Nation?
I think so. Maybe.
Right.
I don't actually have it on hand right now. No, let's wiki it.
Yeah. Dalek invasion. One moment as we wiki a Dalek invasion of Earth.
Dalek invasion of Earth.
Yeah, it was Nation. It was indeed Nation.
So
what I find interesting, just like in prose, in real life with Dalek Invasion, is the fact that Terry Nation was allowed to sell these scripts to another company because he owned the Daleks. Well, what I want to know is, how did another company get Doctor Who? I was just like, come on, BBC, why didn't you copyright that? What are you on about?
Well, they do now. They have a copyright.
Yeah, they've copywritten it now, but at the time I just think it's just so bizarre. So yeah, Dalek Invasion of Earth has one of the most amazing scenes, I think, in classic Who in its entirety, is when they're on London Bridge. Because the Daleks come out of the Thames and they're on London Bridge, man. Like,
yeah,
I could have imagined being a kid in the 60s and that blowing my actual mind. Mummy, are the Daleks actually here?
Yeah, and the fact that like the whole bridge was empty as well, like that effectively already killed everyone in London. Like that would have blown many minds.
Yeah, especially since like when did they film it? Because there's no cars on London Bridge. Are you for real?
Exactly. Like it was crazy.
Like when I was on London Bridge last year, I was last year, and I was just like, how did they get away with filming it? This place is crowded.
Well, it was a different time.
Yeah, different time, eh? Not everybody was driving around in their new cars. But what I find interesting is, obviously it's because, CGI didn't exist back then, but how the House of Parliament's still completely intact.
Yeah, that was great.
I'm just like, that's because CGI didn't exist.
Yeah, they couldn't CGI that out. It would have taken them a long time to try and make that look anything other than actual.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But yeah, so we get our first ever companion goodbye. We get the
Mhm,
Doctor using the magnets to get himself out of a Dalek cell, which I still can't get over how cool that is. Like the
mhm.
Doctor last, like I love how in this story everybody uses their brain to get out of situations.
Yeah, yeah. There's
It's
definitely a brain
superb.
power.
That doesn't happen anymore. If you look at like the Donna episode with the Daleks, when she's just like, "I pushed a button and now the Daleks spin around." Well, yeah, do sex machina. Um, so
I'm half doctor now. Oh.
now I know, right? Oh my goodness. So so Susan leaves the TARDIS, and the Doctor's like, "Hey, look, I'm going to go on a random trip," and while he's asleep, we land on planet Dido in
Yes.
the Rescue.
Yes.
This has one of my favorite openings in that the Doctor he goes, "All right, Susan, open the door," and then he stops,
Yeah, he's like, oh.
and then Barbara's just like snaps him out of it. She's like, "Yo, should I open the door?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And I love how they land on a new planet. The Doctor
Mhm.
walks outside, and he's just like, "You know what? I'm just gonna go back to bed." It's so
But
good.
I'm done.
And
I've already
Ian's
had
just like,
it.
"Well, he is getting old." And then he comes back out and he goes, "You know, I can hear you guys on the scanner, right?" And they're like, "Oh, sorry, Doc." And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, of course you
Yeah.
are." It's so great, and you can definitely see the camaraderie, not just with the characters, but you can tell that the actors definitely loved it. Like they had this bond, and that scene definitely shows that that it wasn't just the characters; it was the actors who were having a good time making fun of how old William Hartnell was.
Yeah.
It's so good. But the sad thing is Hartnell had actually been aged up for the role. He
Mm.
wasn't actually that old when he was with a Doctor. That was all makeup
Yeah.
and fake hair as well.
And then he did start to actually get that. So.
Yeah, which is very sad. But what I love in the story is the Doctor's like, "Hey, we're on planet Dido," and he talks about an adventure he had before the pilot,
Yeah, yeah.
and I'm just like, "Oh my god, this is so cool! This is world building." And he's like, "Hey, I came here with Susan." Still having a bit of a sad. Yes,
It's like,
Doctor, we
oh
know you
no,
had a
sad
granddaughter
one.
called Susan. All right, come on, calm down.
But we've met her, yep.
Yeah, we know. We traveled with her for like a whole season and a half. Just calm down, my bro. Um,
Probably about a year now. Like,
yeah. It was like, oh, okay. And he's adamant that this being that was threatening Barbara and Susan can't be the people he's met. He's just like, I flat out refuse to believe these are the people of the planet.
hmm
And he turns out to be right.
Ah, I see.
Which I really really love with the rescue. What's funny though is they introduce Vicky, who is literally Susan Mark II.
Yeah, she's so Susan.
It's just
Like
Susan Mark II.
they might as well have like called her Susie or something.
Yeah, I know,
Like,
right? Hey. Um,
so good, so good.
one of my favorite moments is in part one of the rescue. Barbara goes to Vicky. She's all like, "Oh, hey, is that short for Victoria?" And she's like, "No, it's Vicky, Vicki." And I'm just like,
Yeah,
"That's amazing." And then like Patrick Troughton's Doctor gets a companion called Victoria, and I was
yeah,
just like,
so good.
"Ah, that's so good."
And he tries to call her Vicky sometimes. He's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
no, it's Victoria.
yeah. No, it's Victoria. We've already had a companion called Vicky. Didn't
Like
you
we
watch
can't.
season 2?
Yeah.
So good. But yeah, Vicky, uh, what I find sad, and it's definitely not the actress's fault, is again, as I said before, they definitely just made her Susan Mark II.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and what I thought was interesting though is they gave her a backstory that her father was actually murdered,
Mm.
which I thought was a little risque for the time. I was like, "Oh, my dad got brutally murdered," and I'm just like, "This is a family show." Like, in the '60s, are
Oh,
like,
what if?
"I don't care."
Oh, what are you doing here, Vicky? Oh, my parents were brutally murdered. I am Batman. Thank you
Yeah,
very
yeah, yeah,
much.
yeah. Basically, um, I like the fact that the future clothes look really medieval. Like the dress Vicky wears looks like sort of like medieval peasant clothes.
Well, I mean, it is a different planet, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
good.
yeah. But I mean, like she is meant to be from an Earth colony, so I'm just like,
Yeah.
this is cool. But I liked that. It wasn't all like, bubble wrap or whatever that Zoe wears in the second Doctor's run. Like,
Yeah, oh god.
it's jumpsuits and all that. It was like, it was like, very cotton, very medieval-esque, and I quite like that. And
Well, that actually makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you want to colonize another planet, you're not going to like send them on with these fancy materials. You just tell them to make clothes out of the things that they get.
yeah,
when
exactly.
they get.
Hey, did we give you some cotton plants? Yeah. Well, yeah. Just use those. All right.
Yeah, just grow some cotton.
Yeah. Just
Yeah. Oh no, no, no. All right, let's give a great past that.
With Vicky though, she's basically, I suppose in a way, a prisoner.
Yeah, she's a slave of some sort.
Yeah. And what's interesting is, why did the people of Dido create a staff that can like obliterate people? It was meant to be used for construction work. That's the first Doctor says, like, oh, they invented it for construction work. And I'm all like, dude, this brutally murders people. I do love that the Doctor fights over it as well. That's one of my favorites. He's just like taunts that guy and then tries to end him with it. I'm just like, Doctor, you know you were going to brutally murder that man. He's just like, I don't care. I'm the first Doctor.
Like, I've been hitting people with shovels, right?
Yeah, dude. Seriously, man, I love that scene from Ranatero when he just kills that guy and leaves a penny on his eye. That's so cool. But the rescue was interesting because it was a two-parter, and it obviously was written super quick just so that they can write a new companion in to be the new Susan.
Yeah, and then they just had to fill out all of her scripts, and they just like wrote Vicky on top of Susan everywhere.
Yeah, that's actually what they did, man. They actually just wrote Vicky where they were supposed to put Susan.
Yeah, well, they're supposed to put Susan or granddaughter, and instead of grandfather, it's Doctor. Yeah. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if at like some points during filming, Vicky was like, "Hold on, the script says grandfather. I'm not supposed to say this line."
He's like, you know, guys, I work here now, right? Stop writing for Carolyn. She's gone.
That's so good. So good.
That's so good.
I like this episode. I like this story too. Actually, it is interesting. I mean, there's actually a lot of interesting things that I found about it. Where mainly when they first leave the TARDIS, the Doctor like takes he takes a rock sample, and it's like he's actually doing some science stuff.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Like this is what explorers do when they go to new planets. Like.
He actually sciences the shit out of it, and then he's like, "Oh, I'm on planet Dido."
Yeah, like you don't normally like see that, especially now, like in sci-fi, that they don't have to. And I suppose like most people just expect that they have the scanners to do that sort of stuff without going outside. But I mean, like nowadays, and even especially back then, is that people wouldn't have thought in their minds at all that a ship would have the ability to scan a planet without like taking a sample of it. So the fact that they did that was just it really enforces for me what sci-fi should really what sort of level that they were going for in his technology. Like they were going for, he had pretty much the same technology as humans do, except the fact that he had a time machine that could change its shape.
Definitely, Classic Who is primarily grounded way more in reality than New Who is, because in New Who the Doctor can like smell what planet he's on.
Yeah.
And he can taste what time he's on. I'm just like, this is so stupid. Why are you making the Doctor God? He didn't have these powers in his first 8 regenerations. What is going on? And I suppose you could say, oh, they get more powers as they regenerate. Then why did the Master turn into a skeleton?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it kind of makes sense is that like the Doctor has been like honing those skills like the whole time. I mean, they have psychic powers, obviously, from almost from the beginning. So leveling like moving that into sort of a psychic knowledge of time and space, like especially considering that they are, early on they get told as they're psychically linked to their TARDIS.
Yeah.
So if the TARDIS is able to travel through time and space, then surely by the end of the regeneration cycle, a Time Lord would be able to detect those things. So, I mean, it is sort of. It's not as sciencey.
It's a bit of a subtle retcon as well.
Yeah, it is a bit of a subtle retcon, but I mean, it can be explained away. I mean, I would like to see a lot more like science stuff going on.
Yeah,
Like
I wouldn't want
I really,
hard science coming back because, like Doctor
yeah,
Who, there's tons of hard science in Classic Who. If you look at
yeah, like
especially
I
the
want,
first 11 seasons, it's super hard science, especially John Pertwee.
yeah, and like how Five has the celery stick for a very specific reason.
Yeah,
It's like sure, like he told them that he needed it to have a specific reason, but like that that whole thing is just that there's very clear science things that go on, and there needs to be more of those. Like they need to basically, whenever they are thinking about doing an episode, or if they're thinking about making a whole story arc, what they need to do is they need to open up the NASA page for scientific anomaly, or like spatial anomalies, and just like read down them and just be like, which one of those sounds really cool, and then just put that in there,
yeah,
or even just have the Doctor like pull out a chemistry set and then just like test some tubes and be like, interesting reaction, like that sort of stuff. Just, it needs to happen.
that's why I like John Pertwee's run with your favorite classic companion, Liz Shaw, because they scienced the shit out of everything in that season.
they science all of the things, like because mainly because he can't use his TARDIS for things. But I mean, like that's kind of the point. Like if the Doctor doesn't, the Doctor shouldn't need his TARDIS to be smart. Like,
Yeah,
but nowadays it seems like that is all that's it. Like,
yeah, he's a TARDIS and a Sonic.
yeah, it's like TARDIS and Sonic. And
What
then,
I hate about the Sonic screwdriver is that how does the Doctor know what the information it's telling him? Does it have an LED display? Like, because in Classic Who, it couldn't do that.
no, I couldn't input. It wasn't a scanner device.
Yeah.
It was simply a unlocking device.
Yeah, it was actually a screwdriver, guys. So yeah. Or that time it set off landmines. That was a little.
Oh yeah, that's
random.
good.
Then again,
Well, I mean, that
whole
makes
CD
sense.
little
Like a
arc is
range
pretty random.
driver.
Yeah. But yeah, so next week we'll pick up the rest of the season, but for the moment we'll leave it at the Rescue Part 2, or as I like to call it, when we're introduced to Susan Mark 2.
Susan 2, yep.
And we'll move on
Susan.
to a Big Finish production, a 8th Doctor story called Minute in Hell.
Which is the next episode after the last one that we talked about, which was a while ago.
Stones of Venice, so.
Yeah, it was just after Stones of Venice. So picking up after the end of that, where the Eighth Doctor and Charlie Pollard leave Venice, and they end up in a well, I'm not actually sure what time period it is, because Lethbridge Stewart still seems to be a younger man.
It's meant to be 2003.
It is meant to be 2003?
Yeah, it's meant to be 2003.
Okay, because it does seem like he is much younger, because he's riding motorcycles, being all spy bad guy. So
I know, right?
I mean, maybe like during like I say, actually no, I know it. Obviously, he had a midlife crisis. He started working out really hard, and he became like the grey-haired like 007. That is absolutely what happened.
Sean Connery and Never Say Never Again, as played by Gordon Lethbridge Stewart.
So good. Yes. So we start off this episode is really weird, actually. Especially as an audio novel, I think it would have made a lot more sense if it was visual, mainly because a lot of the things that go on, like, you're just like, what is going on right now? Like the beginning of the first episode is just like some demonic chanting for like 2 minutes. Like,
yeah, it is too.
Yeah, as I was listening to it, like at the start, like it was like a minute had gone by, and I'm like, is this still going? Like, have I skipped the file somewhere? like, am I supposed to be reading something along with this, or am I being possessed by a demon right now? Like, what is going?
Getting possessed by Big Finish? No.
Yeah. So if you go ahead and listen to this, make sure you actually stick past that, because that is honestly what it's supposed to sound like. And then we find ourselves in a state of America, a brand new state, being created right in the middle of the Bible Belt.
The Bible Bat.
Oh man, and whew, that is a fit. The main antagonist, as it was, has a fantastic Southern accent. It is actually amazing. He like he needs to play every Texan ever. Like it's just so good. Um, like you can tell right away all of his mannerisms just by the way he speaks. Like you absolutely know how he is going to act by the way that he speaks, because he is undeniably the most southern of all the Americas. Like it is so good. And then the fact that he's also playing a well he the act not the actor, the character himself is playing a frontman for for a Catholic church sort of deal, very Bible Belt esque, but is actually in reality a devil worshipping Satanist who's literally trying to summon the devil. And he ends up summoning some Sinovores, which are kind of like demons, I guess. Really, when you think about it, is that they are psychokinetic energy that is there to suck up bad feelings and thoughts out of people. Which, as we've discussed outside of Whoscussion, is possibly what the devil was in the Impossible Planet.
Yeah, when you brought that up the other day, I totally agreed with you because it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because the 10th Doctor even says that it was like it's just like feeding on our fears.
Yeah, that it was and that it was all about the mind. That it was a mind stuck inside of a beast. That the mind was the power, and the creature that was there was not actually him, like him personally. So I think that's exactly what it is. That a Sinovore had gotten itself stuck inside of a gigantic beast, and there was a Sinovore that was the intelligent one. That does make a lot more sense, and especially with this episode, it really sort of hones that in as well. Is that there's like a variety of demons that are just they're not demons, they're just these aliens that are psychically able, and it really plays on that a little bit with the fact that the antagonist as a human is faking being a Christian and actually trying to summon the devil. Like it was an interesting route to go. It did kind of work for them. I'm not like the biggest fan of this episode, but I mean it was alright. It's a better than a lot of things.
Yeah, it was in the 8th Doctor's run. This is probably the weakest, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I do like Charlie Pollard's role to play in this, as she sort of sasses out a lot of people.
Gotta love Pollard, eh?
She's so good, and like how hard she's trying not to swear at some points as well. It's so good.
Like good old Mel Bush.
What's some other good parts? There's this during it. There is at the beginning, Doctor and Charlie have lost their memories due to this psychic nature of what's going on at the moment. Also, the fact that the Doctor accidentally, he's trying to release the whatchamacallit, they have the time creature on their ship. I can't remember what his name is.
Shivers.
Yeah.
The Vortizor.
The Vortizor, yeah. So he's trying to release the Vortizor. So he opens up the TARDIS's doors in the time vortex to try and launch it out.
As you do.
That kind of goes badly. Ends up exposing his link between him and the TARDIS to a drunk man in an alley. It ends up moving all of this consciousness over onto this one as well. So, yeah.
He even mentioned Susan as well, the guy that he accidentally transfers his information over to, which I thought was quite interesting.
The guy who he gets transferred over to basically takes over, knows pretty much everything. Knows a lot of the things to know about the Doctor. The problem is that he's absolutely not the Doctor, and he keeps thinking that he is. But yeah, there's an interesting machine that goes on in there as well. A psi, it's like PSI number. That is apparently a machine that can take the consciousness out of a living mind, hold it for a bit while they repair a human mind, and then pop it back in. And that's the reason why good old Lethbridge Stewart is spying it up there, is because the British intelligence thinks that they could, in theory, manipulate those minds while they've got them saved up, and make weaponized people, basically, which is definitely not something they want. But instead, what they were planning on doing was taking the minds out of these people and then putting demons into them. It's I wouldn't say that's worse, but it's worse.
Well, thankfully these demons are only actually Sinivores, so
but still,
that helps.
It's still like it's still a bit of a apples and oranges, like, so.
Apples and oranges. Yeah, I suppose it is. Eh?
But yeah, it's definitely one of those episodes. I definitely enjoyed it. I mean, Eighth Doctor is a fantastic Doctor, and I'm really, really, really sad that he's not on TV more. But
Yeah, I have to agree with you. This episode is really interesting because they talk about Grace Holloway from the Eighth Doctor movie. However, they can't actually go see her because
they can't,
because of copyright, which is very sad.
Fox.
Also, the place that they say they're in, if I remember correctly, doesn't actually exist in real life.
No, it doesn't. It's a fake state that was apparently being created. Like they'd merged the area between 3 states of America, and they were saying that it was a brand new state, and they were going to draw up new state lines and all that jazz. And I'm not sure how well that would actually work in actual American law. I'm pretty sure that's not something that happens.
Yeah, because they have to change so much about their law. Oh my goodness. This is the first instance of the Brig meeting the Eighth Doctor. Thankfully not the last, which is good.
Aye.
Because I believe before this episode, the Brig just ran into the Sixth.
Oh yeah.
And another episode that wasn't my favourite for 6, which is a bit sad because I really like the Sixth Doctor. The Eighth Doctor losing his memory is just such a running gag for that Doctor.
Yeah, really. It really is. I guess he's just open for it, and I mean, just the starting with that, and then 3 episodes down the line, I'm pretty sure
getting it back again, eh?
Yeah.
This story is the first time Charlie's on contemporary Earth.
I suppose, yeah. Because the first time she's in the future. Yeah, this actually is.
Yeah,
it is. That's right. She makes some comments when somebody tells her television. Look what's on the television, and she's like, "What is that?
What is this television?" But the good thing about Charlie is she's able to, even though there's all these fanciful things going on, she's able to react rather sensibly about it. And for a character who's from like the 19th century, well, not the 19th century, but from the early 20th century, I think it's quite good. I really, really like Charlie as a companion, and I would have loved to have seen when Doctor Who came back on telly if it was Charlie and 8. That would have sold me very well.
Or just any of 8 would have been.
Yeah, I know, right? I wish they'd come back with Paul. That still hurts me deep down. Even if they're going to do the Time War, they could have just did it with Paul, like Russell had intended. What's weird though is even though Doctor Who is a hard, or I wouldn't say a hard science fiction, but it is a science fiction. This is quite a fanciful story.
It is. Well, only insofar as the Sign of Wars, where they seemed to be sort of they seem to have sort of a magical essence to them, but I suppose on the same level that magic is simply a further science that we're unaware of. It never really played into actual magic, I guess. I mean, Bailey wasn't her name? Or I can't remember what the American.
No. Yeah, that was her name.
Yeah. Where she was part of a sort of an anti-magic sort of society, St. Peter's something, where she seemed like she was one of the Slayers from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. You know, like that was sort of the deal. But I don't know if that was intended. But she didn't actually like display any sort of like magical powers. I mean, she had some sort of telepathy going on there, but this is sort of the real end of it, I guess. I suppose it's not as magical as we have seen, like being able to magically go through time.
That's
good old
Matt Pinafore can just stay out of this conversation. I think before we draw it to a close, I think it's real interesting that Charlie hears she's already dead. Because in the actual timeline, he is already dead. She is already meant to be dead. Doctor's gone ahead and screwed the pooch in that one. So Minuet in Hell, I'm glad we had Nicholas Courtney, which is better than we had in any of all New Who, except for that Sarah Jane adventure. Paul McGann kills it again in this, though. Even though it's not my favourite in the McGann run, he's just so good.
He's a fantastic
me like blowing
actor,
smoke up his ass. He's a good Doctor. He really, really is.
He is fantastic. He was a fantastic actor. He's a fantastic voice actor.
Yeah.
I
love India Fisher's Charlie. I just think all round the cast is always solid. And that's one thing I can say about Minuet in Hell is even though it's not my favourite production by Big Finish in any stretch of the imagination, it's got a bloody good cast. And that's something that you can always get with Big Finish is a bloody good cast. Before we close out today, is there anything else you'd like to say on the matter?
No. I think next time we will do, as well as doing the next half of season 2, we will do another 8th Doctor story. Probably the one right after this one.
Yes, definitely. I'll just go into my Big Finish collection here, and we're able to bring that up right now. So the next 8th Doctor story in season 26B is. Oh, wow, you're on season 2 of Invaders from Mars. I'm so looking forward to talking to you about this. It's so ridiculous, but oh my god, it's beautiful. And the one after that is my favourite Doctor Who story, period, is The Chimes of Midnight.
Right on.
Period, of all time. That's my favourite Doctor Who story. It is.
Well, if I get through that, if I get through that this week, then we can talk about that as well.
Yeah, definitely, if we can. And Invaders from Mars is a very short piece. Right
on.
It's one of the shortest in the run, but in no means lacks thereof. It is so silly though. I'm going to enjoy talking to you about it. Well, again, thank everybody for listening in.